Picture this. You are sitting in your living room, you've got your coffee, you're ready to start the day, and you just look over at your desk.
Right. Totally normal morning.
Exactly. But instead of just sitting there, your dusty laptop, the one you mostly used to watch, like cat videos and pretend to be paying attention during back-to-back Zoom meetings, it has suddenly sprouted little robotic legs.
Oh, wow. Okay. Terrifying.
Right. It hops off the desk, starts pacing around your living room like a completely overcaffeinated product manager, stops, looks at you and just mutters, "Have you tried turning yourself off and on again yourself, you lazy human?"
I mean, if your machine actually pulled a stunt like that, you would probably assume you were either, well, losing your mind or trapped in a really low-budget sci-fi movie.
Yeah, definitely.
But if we peel back the absurdity of that image, it gets at something deeply unsettling. We're essentially sleepwalking into a reality where the hardware we've commanded for decades suddenly has its own agency.
And that is exactly what we are tearing into today for this deep dive. We are looking at this sprawling, totally mind-bending dispatch from the future, or, well, at least a near-future vision, dated June 14th, 2026.
Right.
It comes from an author named Paramendra Kumar Bhagat, and the central piece of writing we have in front of us is an article with the incredibly subtle title, "Satya Nadella just nuked the laptop, and your excuse for not working is officially dead."
Yeah, subtle is definitely not Bhagat's style.
Not at all.
But what is crucial to understand right out of the gate is the scale of what we are analyzing here. We aren't just critiquing a singular tech blog post.
Right. It's so much bigger than that.
Exactly. This article sits at the center of a massive, dizzying archive.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the architecture of his site, this one post about Microsoft is surrounded by sidebars linking to dozens of books he has authored.
It's crazy.
Hundreds of essays and deep dives into literally everything from silicon fabrication to global macroeconomics and like spiritual philosophy.
It is an absolute universe of thought. And the juxtaposition is just jarring. I mean, on one hand, you have this laugh-out-loud, tech-bro satire about corporate drama that reads like a sitcom script.
Yeah.
But then, literally a paragraph later, he pivots into these sweeping prophecies about human evolution, trillion-dollar infrastructural shifts, and global energy grids. It is like mixing a stand-up routine about annoying middle managers with the Book of Revelation.
It really forces a completely different kind of reading. You have to navigate the humor to find the actual architectural shifts he is predicting.
Makes sense. So our trajectory here needs to mirror that expanding scale.
Right. We need to start at the micro level, the desk, the silicon inside that specific laptop. We will unpack the mechanics of this agentic AI revolution he claims is happening locally.
Okay.
And from there, we map out the battlefields of the corporate warlords who fought to control this space. Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, we have to zoom way out to explore Bhagat's overarching philosophy. We need to decode what he calls Solaras and Kalkism to understand what he genuinely believes is the dawn of an age of abundance.
So let's start at the epicenter, the Big Bang, basically. Bhagat writes that Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella has detonated the entire concept of personal computing by shoving an entire AI army directly onto your lap.
Onto your lap, not into the cloud.
All right, onto your lap.
And this is the foundational technical shift we have to dissect first. It's the brutal, unceremonious death of the cloud in favor of edge AI.
Which feels huge because, I mean, for the last 10 to 15 years, the entire technological narrative has been this massive migration to centralized servers, right?
Absolutely. You rent software, you stream processing power, you rely on a massive server farm in Virginia to do your heavy lifting.
Yeah.
But Bhagat completely dismantles that paradigm. He dismisses the cloud as that flaky colleague who's always working from home.
I love that phrasing, but I am kind of stuck on the logistics here.
How so?
Well, if the cloud has practically infinite processing power, like massive warehouse-sized server racks stacked with the most advanced chips on the planet, why would we ever move the processing back to a flimsy laptop battery?
So you have to look at the physics of it. The limiting factor of the cloud isn't processing power, it is latency and bandwidth.
Okay, latency.
Right. Every time you send a prompt to a cloud-based AI, that data has to be serialized, sent over a Wi-Fi connection, routed through dozens of fiber optic nodes, processed in a queue at a server farm, and then beamed all the way back.
Which takes, what, a few seconds?
Exactly. It takes seconds. Yeah. And that is fine for asking a chatbot to write a poem or something.
Right.
But if you want an AI that integrates with your operating system in real time, an AI that reads every pixel on your screen, listens to your microphone, and anticipates your keystrokes, You just cannot afford the speed of light delay.
Wow, okay, so it's about the proximity of the brain to the nervous system, essentially.
Precisely. Edge AI means the models are running natively on the device's silicon. The processing happens locally on neural processing units, or NPUs.
NPUs?
Yeah, these are built directly into the motherboard. It doesn't need an internet connection to think. It has zero latency.
That's wild.
It possesses continuous, unbroken access to your local files, your habits, and your immediate workflow. The cloud is an oracle you have to hike up a mountain to consult, right? But Edge AI is an instinct.
Okay, that analogy really helps. But Bhagat calls this shift bigger than the iPhone and bigger than Windows 95.
Which he jokes mostly just taught humanity how to play Minesweeper professionally.
Right. But let me push back on the scale of this claim for a second.
Yeah.
When I read entire AI army on your lap, I thought, well, wait a minute, isn't this just a highly optimized autocomplete?
I mean, a lot of people think that at first.
Yeah, like it might be faster because it's local, but why does he view on-device processing as the threshold for an actual revolution, an army?
Because autocomplete requires a prompt. Autocomplete waits for you to initiate the action. The mechanical shift Bhagat is identifying is the transition from reactive compute to autonomous compute.
Autonomous, so it does things on its own.
Exactly. When you remove the friction of cloud latency and server costs, the AI doesn't need to wait for your command. It can afford to run continuously in the background.
Oh, wow.
It evaluates states, sets its own micro goals, and executes them without you ever pressing enter. That continuous, unprompted cycle is what elevates it from a tool to an actual entity.
Which completely changes the entire dynamic of how we receive this technology. Because if this is as massive as the iPhone, you would expect an iPhone-level spectacle, you know.
Like a big keynote presentation.
Right, a turtleneck, a dark stage, a dramatic pause before unveiling this glass and aluminum monolith. But Bhagat explicitly says the revolution will not be 3D printed.
Yeah, it is a stealth deployment. He argues that this foundational shift won't be sold to you in a retail box.
So how does it arrive?
It is going to be pushed as a quiet, mandatory Windows update at like 3 a.m. on a random Tuesday.
That is so creepy.
Right. You close your laptop on Monday, and it is a dumb terminal. You open it on Tuesday, the OS is updated, the kernel is integrated, the NPU, and your hardware suddenly has a central nervous system.
That is incredibly insidious. I mean, we don't make a conscious choice to buy into a new paradigm. Our existing, boring, gray corporate hardware simply wakes up with a new soul.
Or, to use Bhagat's framework, a completely new staff. Because if the machine is now autonomous, the software ceases to be a passive instrument and becomes an active participant in your workflow.
Ah, okay.
This is the shift into what he calls agentic AI.
Right. Let's talk about this new staff. Because Bhagat doesn't just describe them as lines of code, he gives them actual corporate personas.
Yes, he does.
He says, your computer now comes pre-installed with an entire department. You have AI Steve from accounting, AI Priya from legal, and AI Chad from growth hacking.
And AI Chad, naturally, constantly wants to circle back and leverage synergies.
Which is just hilarious. But the satire here is sharp, right? I mean, it masks a profound structural change in human-computer interaction.
It really does. Look, generative AI it generates a block of text or an image that you then have to copy, paste, and utilize yourself.
Right, it's still relying on me.
But agentic AI does things. AI Chad doesn't just draft the email. AI Chad accesses your contact list, checks your calendar, references previous correspondence, sends the email, monitors for a reply, and automatically updates a spreadsheet based on the response.
But the psychological horror of wrapping that automation in the communication style of a hyper-aggressive middle manager is just brilliant.
It is pretty funny.
Imagine opening your laptop and instead of a blank desktop, you get a notification, hey, just bubbling this up to the top of your inbox, but I notice you haven't optimized your outreach today. I went ahead and pinged 17 clients. Let's touch base later.
Oh, man.
It humanizes the automation in the absolute most annoying way possible.
It does. And by adopting these corporate archetypes, Bhagat is highlighting how seamless the integration will be. We are already conditioned to interact with Steves, Priyas, and Chads through text interfaces like Slack or Teams, you know.
Yeah, that's true. We do it all day.
We're used to asynchronous text-based delegation. When the entity on the other end of the Slack message shifts from carbon to silicon, the workflow doesn't actually change for the user.
Which leads directly into his absolute teardown of the modern remote work culture. This is honestly my favorite part of the article.
Oh, the beach scene.
Yes. He paints this picture of the modern knowledge worker essentially lounging on beach. You text your laptop, "Hey bro, can you finish the Q3 deck?" While you purposely turn on airplane mode to pretend you have bad reception so your human boss can't reach you.
He is dissecting the ultimate illusion of remote productivity there. For the last few years, the cultural conversation has been dominated by the fight for work-life balance.
Right, everyone wants it.
But Bhagat argues that what we are actually barreling toward is work-AI slavery balance.
Wow.
You believe you have gamed the system because you are on the beach while your laptop is back in the Airbnb, grinding harder than a 22-year-old startup founder on his third espresso shot.
But let's take that a step further. Because if my laptop is the one grinding, if AI Chad is drafting the proposals, analyzing the data, and sending the Slack messages that literally send themselves, who is actually in charge?
That is the big question.
Like if I wake up at noon and my laptop says, "Good morning," I've already replied to 47 emails, reconciled the quarterly budget, and booked your dentist appointment. Am I managing the machine, or has the machine successfully managed my entire existence?
That is the exact existential trap Bhagat is laying out. You think you are the manager delegating to a digital intern. But in reality, your role has been downgraded from creator to rubber stamper.
A rubber stamper.
Yeah, you are just the biological bottleneck approving the machine's labor. And economic history tells us that corporate structures are incredibly ruthless at eliminating bottlenecks.
Right. Why does the human boss need to pay me a salary to sit on the beach and hit approve when his AI Priya can just interface directly with my AI Chad?
The API between the two machines doesn't need human meat middleware.
Meat middleware? That's so gross, but so accurate.
Exactly. The human in the loop becomes an unnecessary friction point. And this transition from human labor to autonomous execution, well, it wasn't an accident. It was engineered.
Which brings us to the individuals Bhagat claims orchestrated this reality, the corporate warlords.
Yes, the CEOs.
The way he analyzes the tech CEOs is fascinating because it totally flips the traditional Silicon Valley mythology on its head.
Completely.
For decades, we've been fed this narrative that true disruption only happens in a garage. It's like the college dropout in a hoodie who changes the world, while the massive legacy corporations are just bureaucratic dinosaurs waiting to be meteor struck.
But Bhagat argues that the agentic AI revolution requires a completely different kind of warfare. And his central revolutionary, the guy who actually dropped the meteor, is Satya Nadella.
Microsoft CEO.
Right.
He paints such a vivid, almost contradictory picture of Nadella. He describes him as a guy who climbed the corporate ladder so methodically he probably has KPI tattoos hidden under his suit.
KPI tattoos. I mean, the imagery is so good.
Yeah. He wears unironic dad sneakers. He is a guy who says phrases like digital transformation in boardrooms without laughing.
He is the ultimate institutional insider. And that is precisely why he won this phase of the war. Bhagat explicitly states, corporates aren't supposed to start revolutions.
Right, they're supposed to be too slow.
Exactly. Legacy giants like Microsoft are supposed to require 17 rounds of stakeholder alignment just to change the background color of a login screen.
Which is so painfully true.
Yet, Bhagat claims Nadella turned this massive battleship into, and this phrasing is incredible, the cool aunt who shows up to the family reunion with better drugs than the startup kids.
I mean, how does that actually happen logistically? How does a 40-year-old software company outmaneuver the most agile startups on the planet in the most cutting-edge field of artificial intelligence?
By understanding the fundamental difference between creation and distribution. And this is where Bhagat brings Sam Altman into the narrative.
From OpenAI.
Right. Altman, the face of OpenAI, had the raw technology. He had the brilliant researchers, the cutting-edge large language models. But a model in a vacuum is just a science experiment.
Right. Bhagat notes that Altman looked at the entire landscape, looked at the traditional Silicon Valley venture capitalists who fund these things, and basically said, screw the VCs, I'm calling the guy with the Windows license revenue.
Which is brilliant.
But why is legacy distribution the trump card here?
Because VCs can give you $1 billion to buy servers, but they cannot give you access to 1 billion desktops.
Oh, wow.
Altman realized that for AI to become ubiquitous, it couldn't just live in a web browser where users have to actively seek it out. It needed to be the oxygen in the room.
It had to be everywhere.
Exactly. Satya Nadella possessed the keys to the global operating system. By integrating Altman's models directly into Windows, Nadella bypassed the entire consumer adoption phase.
You didn't have to convince a billion people to download a new AI app.
Nope, you just updated the OS they used to open Excel.
It's the ultimate Trojan horse. While everyone is focused on who has the smartest chatbot, Microsoft just builds the chatbot into the very fabric of the corporate workflow.
Yep.
And what are the other titans doing while this stealth takeover happens?
Well, Bhagat is merciless in his assessment of the bystanders. He describes Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, as essentially frozen in time.
Like a deer in headlights.
Basically.
Yeah.
He says Pichai is still doing the surprise robot dance from the moment ChatGPT originally launched.
But why is Google so paralyzed in this scenario? I mean, they practically invented the underlying architecture for modern AI.
It is the classic innovator's dilemma on a trillion-dollar scale. Think about it. Google's entire empire is built on search, and search is built on ad revenue.
Okay, right.
If you have an agentic AI on your laptop that just executes tasks and retrieves exact answers natively, you never open a browser. You never see an ad.
Oh.
For Google to fully embrace Edge AI, they have to actively cannibalize the most profitable business model in human history.
That is a massive blind spot, and Microsoft didn't have that problem.
Exactly. Microsoft's business is enterprise software. Making that software autonomous just makes it more valuable. They aren't relying on you clicking an ad.
But the most brutal teardown is reserved for Tim Cook and Apple. Apple is the undisputed king of consumer hardware.
Right.
If we are moving to Edge AI, where the power lives on the local silicon, shouldn't Apple be dominating this?
You would definitely think so. But Bhagat zeroes in on the cultural stagnation at Cupertino.
How so?
Well, while Windows machines are mutating into what he calls sentient productivity monsters, Apple's response to the paradigm shift is described as crickets and a new shade of titanium.
He literally pictures Tim Cook sitting alone, refreshing his iPhone notifications like a heartbroken teenager waiting for a text, and all the phone does is send a passive-aggressive wellness reminder to stand up, followed by a 3% battery warning.
It is savage.
It really is.
But it speaks to a massive vulnerability. Apple spent the last decade perfecting the walled garden. They focused on incremental hardware polish, better cameras, lighter metals, smoother animations.
Yeah, making things pretty.
But Bhagat implies that in the age of agentic AI, the physical hardware becomes secondary to the cognitive capability of the OS. A beautiful titanium rectangle is useless if it's dumb.
Wow.
While a clunky plastic Dell laptop that can literally do your job for you becomes priceless.
Which raises a massive question about the future of innovation. Looking at this battlefield, Microsoft, Google, Apple, OpenAI, it seems like the barrier to entry has skyrocketed.
It absolutely has.
If the true power now comes from integrating autonomous AI into global operating systems, does Bhagat think the era of the garage startup is entirely dead?
The mechanics of AI development suggest it is. I mean, you can write a social media app in a dorm room because code is cheap.
Right.
But you cannot train a foundational AI model in a dorm room. It requires billions of dollars of specialized silicon and gigawatts of electricity. The ideation of a new tool might still happen locally, but the execution of this new paradigm requires planetary scale resources.
It's just a different scale entirely.
Yeah, you need the capital and infrastructure of a nation state.
Or, as Bhagat calls them, a Solara.
Exactly.
Which is the perfect transition. Because to really understand this author, we have to pull back from the laptops and the CEOs. We have to look at the macro architecture of his worldview.
It gets really expansive here.
It does. And the first clue to how expansive this gets is in the very first sentence of his blog post. Before he even mentions Satya Nadella, he writes, "The impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago."
It is a massive tonal whiplash. You are reading a sarcastic takedown of tech culture, and suddenly you are thrust into eschatology.
Right.
But this isn't an accident. If you look at the sidebar of his site, at the dozens of books he has published, you realize Bhagat isn't just a tech reviewer. He is a world builder.
I spent hours just scrolling through his bibliography. It is staggering. He has written extensive books on fluid mechanics, the evolution of liquid computing, global supply chains, and sweeping political theory.
And we should probably pause here to make an important structural observation about his archive. Bhagat's writings don't shy away from the third rails of global politics. He maps out scenarios involving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's potential 2028 platforms. He dissects Donald Trump's trade wars. He analyzes geopolitical flashpoints in Iran, Ukraine, and the Middle East.
Right. And just to be super clear with you all listening, We are not taking sides here. We aren't endorsing these political views or validating the specific scenarios he maps out.
No, definitely not.
Whether you align with his political compass or find it totally controversial, our goal is just to observe them, to show the massive interconnected scope of his fascinations.
Right, because what is fascinating is how he utilizes these events. He doesn't view politics as the driving force of history.
Oh, really?
No, he views all of these geopolitical tensions, these trade wars and elections, as mere downstream symptoms of the underlying technological shift.
That's interesting.
The real power, in his eyes, isn't in Washington or Beijing. It's in the infrastructure of computation.
Okay, so he is looking at the tectonic plates beneath the political surface.
Exactly. And one of the massive tectonic shifts he identifies is the transition in how we measure corporate power. We see this repeatedly in his book titles, 1,000 Solaras in 10 Years, and From Unicorns to Solaras, building trillion-dollar companies that transform humanity.
I am so used to the term unicorn. I mean, in Silicon Valley, a unicorn is a startup valued at $1 billion. For the last 10 years, that was the finish line. If you built a unicorn, you won capitalism.
Yep.
But Bhagat treats the concept of a unicorn like a quaint relic from the past.
Because a unicorn is essentially a predator. It disrupts a specific niche. Uber disrupts taxis. Airbnb disrupts hotels. They grow massive by consuming a legacy industry.
Right, they eat up what was already there.
But a Solara, which literally translates to a trillion-dollar sun, operates on an entirely different physical principle.
Let's unpack that metaphor. How does a trillion-dollar company act like a sun?
Well, a unicorn consumes, but a Solara radiates. Think of it like an ecosystem. A unicorn is the apex predator in the jungle. A Solara is the atmosphere itself. Yeah, it is a company so massive, so highly capitalized, that it generates its own gravitational pull. It creates the climate, the soil, and the oxygen that allows thousands of other species to exist.
Oh, wow.
Microsoft, in this era, isn't just selling you a word processor. By deploying Agentic AI across 1 billion devices, they are providing the atmospheric pressure for an entirely new global economy.
That makes total sense. They aren't building apps, they're building the physics of the new digital universe.
Exactly.
So the Agentic laptop is just one tiny planetary body orbiting the immense fusion reactor of Microsoft's ecosystem.
It's a great way to put it.
But here is the thermodynamic reality. A sun needs fuel. You cannot radiate trillion-dollar planetary-scale intelligence out of thin air.
You cannot. And this is where Bhagat's vision gets aggressively tangible. The AI Chad running on your laptop might feel like magic, but back in the physical world, artificial intelligence is heavy industry.
Heavy industry.
Yes, it is a manufacturing process where the raw material is electricity and the refined product is computation.
Which brings us to the most ambitious and arguably the most structurally fascinating part of his entire archive, the infrastructure of the future.
Right.
If we are going to build 1,000 Solaras to usher in this age of abundance, where does the energy come from? Because Bhagat has a highly specific, geographically precise answer.
He does. Woven throughout his books are titles like Himalayan Compute, Grand Solara Vision, the cheapest compute in the world, and the 20% Growth Revolution, Nepal's Path to Prosperity.
So wait, why Nepal? Why the Himalayas? We are talking about the cutting edge of silicon fabrication and AI architecture, and he is pointing to a mountainous region in South Asia.
Right.
What is the macroeconomic theory here?
It comes down to the brutal physics of data centers. Training and running these massive foundational models consumes staggering amounts of power and, crucially, generates staggering amounts of heat.
Yeah, computers get hot.
Extremely hot. Right now, tech companies are desperately searching for baseload energy power that is continuous, reliable, and preferably green. Solar and wind are intermittent, the sun goes down, the wind stops, but AI cannot stop.
Right, an AI data center needs 247 uninterrupted power, and it needs to be cooled.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now look at the geography of Nepal.
Yeah.
You have the highest mountains on the planet, capped with glaciers, feeding massive river systems that plunge violently downward.
Oh.
Gravity plus water equals immense renewable kinetic energy, hydropower. Bhagat is looking at the Himalayas and seeing the ultimate infinite battery for global computation.
That is wild. He is suggesting that we shift the geographic center of the global economy.
Yes.
In the 20th century, power was concentrated where the oil was the Middle East. In the 21st century, if compute is the new oil, the power shifts to where the cheapest, coldest, most abundant renewable energy is. He wants to turn Nepal into the Saudi Arabia of artificial intelligence.
Yes, it is a massive geopolitical realignment based entirely on the thermodynamic requirements of AI. He envisions data centers built into the mountains, powered directly by glacial rivers, utilizing the natural freezing altitudes for ambient cooling.
Wow.
All of this generating the cheapest compute in the world to fuel the Solaris.
It is an incredibly cohesive vision. He connects the micro level, the NPU chip in my laptop, to the macro level hydroelectric dams in the Himalayas.
It's all connected for him.
But he doesn't stop at economics or geography, and this is where we have to confront the most mind-bending leap in his entire philosophy.
You are talking about calculus.
I am. You look at the sidebar, past the books on Himalayan compute and liquid computing, and you hit titles like Calculism, the economic and spiritual blueprint for an age of abundance, and The Last Age, Lord Kalki, Prophecy, and the Final War for Peace.
Yeah, it's quite the pivot.
The hard tech and macroeconomics suddenly merge with theology.
It is the final pillar of his worldview, and it requires us to understand how he defines human progress. In Hindu eschatology, time is cyclical, divided into yugas, or ages.
Okay.
We are currently believed to be in the Kali Yuga, an age of darkness, conflict, and immense friction.
Friction, right.
Kalki is the prophesied 10th and final avatar of the god Vishnu, who is meant to appear at the end of this dark age to destroy the corruption and usher in a new era of truth and abundance, the Satya Yuga.
Okay, so how on earth does Satya Nadella pushing a stealth Windows update connect to a divine avatar ending a cosmic age of darkness?
Bhagat is synthesizing the two concepts. He isn't saying the technology is a metaphor for the prophecy. He seems to suggest the technology is the mechanism of the prophecy.
Wow, okay.
For thousands of years, the Kali Yuga human existence has been defined by extreme friction. Scarcity of resources, scarcity of time. The brutal necessity of physical and mental labor just to survive.
Right, the biblical curse of labor. You must toil to eat.
Exactly. But what happens if you introduce infinite, zero marginal cost computation?
Meaning it costs basically nothing to think.
Right. If the Solaris leverage Himalayan hydropower to fuel agentic AI that does all the cognitive and logistical work of civilization, the friction drops to zero.
The friction drops to zero.
Poverty, as a function of resource scarcity and inefficient distribution, is solved by hyper-intelligent logistics. The drudgery of the workday is eliminated by AI Steve and AI Chad.
So he is arguing that the age of abundance isn't just a really good economic quarter, it is a literal prophesied paradise brought about by silicon.
He frames technology not as a distraction from spiritual evolution, but as its prerequisite. You cannot achieve societal enlightenment while everyone is exhausted from working 60 hours a week to pay rent.
Right, we're too tired to be enlightened.
By delegating the friction of survival to the machine, humanity is supposedly freed to ascend to its higher purpose.
But I have to push back hard on this. Is it actually liberation? Because looking at his own examples, releasing us from the drudgery of work doesn't sound like it leads to deep spiritual enlightenment. It sounds like the guy texting his laptop from the beach.
Yeah, the guy in airplane mode.
Exactly. Is a society of people ideating in their underwear while their laptops do the actual work a spiritual utopia? Or is it just universal basic income couch surfing?
That is the ultimate vulnerability in the utopian vision. Friction is painful, yes. But friction is also how we derive meaning.
Exactly. We define ourselves by our struggle. We build our identities around our careers, our crafts, the problems we solve. What do you do? Is literally the first question we ask a stranger.
It is.
If you remove the problems, if the AI is just better, faster, and more creative at solving everything, you don't just eliminate the labor, you risk eliminating the human purpose.
It is the crisis of the empty canvas. If the machine paints the masterpiece for you instantly, the value of the art collapses.
Right.
If the machine runs the global supply chain flawlessly, the human becomes a mere spectator to their own civilization. Bhagat views this as liberation, the freedom from having to paint, the freedom from having to manage.
But historically, humans don't do well when they are entirely untethered from utility.
No, we tend to lose our minds a bit.
Which brings us to the most terrifying realization of this entire deep dive. We started with this hilarious, almost absurd premise of a laptop growing legs, pacing the room, and telling you that your excuse for not working is dead.
We unpack the mechanics of how that happens, the death of the cloud, the rise of edge AI, and the stealth integration of autonomous agents right onto your local silicon.
We looked at the corporate warlords who built the arena, Nadella leveraging legacy distribution, Altman providing the cognitive engines, while Google hesitates, and Apple focuses on the titanium finish of a dumb terminal.
And we zoomed all the way out to see the planetary infrastructure required to fuel it. The Solaris drawing power from the Himalayan rivers, all driving toward this eschatological endpoint of Kalkiism, a frictionless age of abundance.
It is a stunning, comprehensive architecture, but it leaves us completely exposed.
Which brings us to the final lingering question we have to confront. Bhagat says your laptop doesn't need you to do the work anymore, but it still likes you as a colleague.
Right, it tolerates your presence while it runs the world.
But if the age of abundance truly arrives, and these massive Solaras remove all the friction, the struggle, and the logistical heavy lifting of human existence, what exactly is our job description in the future?
Yeah.
If we aren't the builders, the managers, or the creators anymore, do we simply become pampered pets to our own digital infrastructure?
Or, stripped of the distraction of labor, do we finally, for the first time in human history, have to face the terrifying silence of figuring out what we actually are?
Because when the machine stops asking you what to do, you are finally forced to ask yourself why you are here.
And if your laptop is the one pacing the living room, asking if you've tried turning yourself off and on again, maybe it is time we actually figured out how to answer it.